Okay, so now what I'm going to walk you through is our Outreach Playbook resource. And this guide right here is going to be your best friend when you're doing cold outreach. What we're going to cover here is, some frameworks you can use, some templates when you're messaging prospects, even example subject lines, call to actions, what you can say in your LinkedIn connection request message. Really, we wanted to make this as easy as possible for you all. Now, very, very important is I know whenever we get like a template to use from someone else that we just want to copy and paste it to save time, but that's not why we made this document, because there's no template I could give you that's just going to work verbatim. Again, one of the most important things about writing effective copy is understanding your market. What works in one industry may not work in another industry. What works with one person or one job title may not work with somebody else. So these templates are more just to kind of serve as training wheels to get you started and just to show you what a good message looks like, and to show you some of those principles we covered earlier in action. But ultimately, you should always be taking the template and changing it a bit to customize what you're doing. And I highly recommend that you actually start to write your own templates. If you need to use the ones that we have at first, that's totally fine. But the best thing you can do is really write it, naturally and genuinely to your actual avatar. So, you can use these at the start, but try to just reverse engineer them. As you're reading through these and as you're using some of them, try to think like, why did we structure the template that way? What principles did we have in action here? How did we talk about the problem? How did we insert the solution? And just try to reverse engineer it. And definitely practice writing your own. Because again, if you just use the templates as a crush, then you're not going to get that great at this. You got to use them to get started, but the only way to get better at writing copy is by actually writing copy. You need to practice, practice, practice. The more that you can kind of commit to really mastering the skill set, the better. And just in general, you need to be customizing it to what you're doing. So now if you scroll down a little bit on the document, you'll see that we have a general framework, which is really like the core points. So these few points should be covered in basically all of your outreach messaging. Think of it like ingredients in a cake, right? There's probably like hundreds of thousands of different cakes you can bake out there, but they mostly consist of the same things. There's milk, there's eggs, there's butter, flour. So no matter what other stuff you put on a cake, you need those four things. So look at the outreach as the same thing. You can get super creative with all your messaging and your copy, but there's a couple things that you need no matter what. If you look at the general framework, the core points, these are the things that you really need no matter what. First you need is a personalized first line. Now again, we talked earlier about writing generic outreach emails. You can do that, but we highly recommend you personalize the messages. It does take time, but it does lead to a much higher response rate. So that was what we spoke about earlier about, adding a sentence or two that kind of customizes it to that person and something that you found when you were researching them. So personalized first line, definitely a really important core point to have. Then you start out with either a problem that they have or a goal that they might have. So either one works, but that kind of ties into talking about them, not yourself. So again, most people, they send an email and the first few lines are, hey, this is my name and this is my job title and I work at this company. You don't want to do that. You don't want to be talking about yourself right away. You can talk about yourself a little bit, but later in the email. Always start out talking about the other person. So again, the second core point is either a problem or a goal, one or the other. Just something that's actually important to them. That's really the main idea. And then the next core point, number 3, would be introducing your solution. And you can either say what the solution is, you can talk about results that you've gotten for another client, or even like a USP, maybe something that's unique about your solution. Just ultimately something to show them, why they should believe you. So basically the core point here is actually introducing what you do. Because of course, there is a time and place to introduce what you do, but it comes after you actually personalize your message and address a problem or a need that they might have first. So after you've done that, then you can go into actually introducing what you do. And if you can, try to fit in some kind of proof or credibility as far as, why they should believe you. And again, that can be either results you've gotten from another client. It can be either like testimonial. It can be either maybe some big brands you've worked with. And if you don't have any of that, if you're really a new business, just try to find something that can kind of show you're credible. But ultimately, the whole point of this is to show that you can get them results. Because first, we pointed out a problem. Now you're trying to say, hey, I can help you solve this problem. So that's all about the solution. And in this part, you're not supposed to write an essay. It should be 1-2 sentences max, no more than that. And then the fourth core point is a call to action. Like we said, you have to always have an end to the message that actually asks them for something. You can't just write this whole message and then just leave it blank, because then this person doesn't really know that, like how to reply. So the fourth core point is having a call to action. And you can either ask for a meeting, you can ask for just if they're interested, ask if they have a problem. We'll cover this more later in the framework, but you need to have just one call to action at the end. So those are the 4 ingredients that every outreach message should have. a personalized first line, a problem or need or goal, aka something that's actually important to them, introducing your solution, and then the call to action. Now, another way to help you remember this is the 5 Ps. We have personalization, problem, promise meaning like what is the solution or what results can you get for them, proof, credibility to back up your claim, and then push. Push is the call to action, pushing them to the next step, which is to reply or schedule time with you or whatever that may be. So that's hopefully a handy way to help you remember the core points and the key ingredients to your outreach. Now, if you scroll down a little bit more on the document, we have examples of a load of different types of CTAs. The way that I like to categorize this is there's soft CTAs, hard CTAs, and then also just conversation starters. So a soft call to action is usually what I recommend you do most of the time, because nowadays, we're always getting bombarded with people trying to sell us stuff, and most of the time it's usually someone asking for like a 30-minute meeting or putting their calendar link. So when you do that, you kind of just get lumped up in that bucket with everybody else. So softer call to actions stand out a little bit, plus they're a little bit easier to say yes to. So a soft call to action, as you'll see in the document, would be like, hey, is this something you want to discuss? Are you interested in talking about this? Are you guys open to getting some help in this department? Can I send over some information? Something that's, again, much easier, much smoother, and simpler to say yes to. A hard call to action would be like, hey, are you free for 15 minutes next week? Or would you be available this Friday? And again, that can work, but I usually just steer clear of that because everyone else does it, and you're just asking for more, right? And then another call to action would be just starting a conversation. So you don't even need to necessarily gauge their interest. You could just ask a question about the problem, a question about their business, or even say like, hey, is this something you want to learn more about? So ultimately, again, you're just trying to get the conversation started. So you could definitely go that route as well. But you'll see a bunch of examples on the document here. And again, definitely feel free to create your own. Now, we also have some subject lines in the document as well. You'll see a bunch of different examples. I definitely recommend putting the person's name in the subject line because it'll catch their attention more when they're kind of scanning their inbox. And yeah, you'll see a bunch of different examples here, but one thing I can really recommend is try to not make your subject line look like a marketing headline. If you have this like big claim like, hey, we're going to increase your revenue 300%, it just shows someone that it's a sales email, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And again, you can do that. And if it is something that's actually good and useful to that person, they might still open it. But again, remember that everybody has that sales radar. The more that you come off as a salesperson, the more that people just instantly, if they're busy, they're not going to prioritize that, right? They're just going to see you as another cold pitch. And even if they're interested, again, people are reading their email when they're like busy and going through a bunch of other things for their day, right? The best thing you can do is try to blend in with your subject line and just seem like another, colleague emailing them about something. So a good way to blend in would be just something very neutral, like, hey, I had a question about blank, or hey, could we chat sometime? You can even make it seem like a to-do list item, like, hey, the report. Don't be misleading in it. It should, whatever is in your subject line should also tie into your email. But if you do something like what I just explained, then it'll blend in a little bit more and it'll seem like a coworker emailed them. Now, again, we're not trying to actually act like a coworker. You don't want to be deceiving, but the whole point is just try to blend into like what they might normally get emailed about, and try to avoid the really sensational, dramatic marketing headlines, because then they'll just instantly see like, oh, this is a pitch. And again, you can still test those as well. It's always good to test, because you never really know what's going to work. But generally, you're better off just sticking to something neutral and not something that's going to put their sales radar off. Now, what you'll see below is a bunch of templates and also some examples of real life emails that are using those templates. And I want you to take a look at this right after this video and see, how we've kind of blended in all those 4 core points and those, those 5 Ps into the actual templates. You can see some of these here are a little bit longer. Some of these here are really just a sentence or two, but ultimately all of them are really at that like 6-sentence maximum. Always recommend you keep it really short and sweet. If somebody can read your email in 15, 30 seconds, then you're in much better shape. And one cool thing about cold outreach is you don't have to just use this to get clients. We actually put some templates in here for if you want to speak on someone's podcast or at an event, or if you want to maybe form a partnership or a joint venture with somebody. So again, what we're teaching you here is actually just how to get someone's attention and how to get a meeting with somebody. So you can use this for other purposes too, other than just client acquisition. And we have a couple examples of that as well in the templates below. We also have some examples for follow-up messages. You don't want to just email someone once, because odds are they're just busy and it just slips their mind. So you want to usually send them a few messages over time. So we have a couple examples for those as well. And at the very bottom, we have some examples for LinkedIn connection request messages. When you're sending somebody an email, you can just send them your message right away. But with LinkedIn, you actually have to connect and add them as a friend first. And you can add a little note in there. And we have a few different examples of how you could write that note at the bottom. And that's how the Outreach Playbook works. Now your homework after this lesson is go write your first actual template. Go think back to the ICP that you had in mind when you built your first list in the previous module. And now write your first outreach message to them. Again, guys, we want to be building your first campaign as you're going through the course so that you can put this all into action. I know how it is when you have a new course and you're just excited to like learn and soak up all the information and skip to the next lesson, but please take some time to actually just do this right now because you'll actually make the knowledge stick. So go ahead and write your first template and I'll see you in the next lesson.